Hello everyone, my name is Rafael, for those who doesn't know. Thank you for the introduction. Well, since we are after lunch, it'd be a very easy paper. This is a survey, so it's very relaxing, much debate, no paginated, something like that. So it'd be very relaxing, and well, it's a survey, and it's not a complex work. It's very simple, and so my English is not perfect, so I have a script here, so I'll be reading a little bit just to be more understandable. So I want to say that the title says pretty much everything that I'm proposing this working paper. To summarize the paper, does a survey about the empirical literature. That is the literature that measures the impacts of monetary policy over gender and race inequality. Okay, as I said, it's not a complex work per se, but I think it's a necessary work to be done. And I'm hoping to show you why it's necessary until the end of my presentation. So this is my objective here. Sorry, this is my objective here. Well, the paper, yes. So part of my objective here is to show what the so far literature has to offer for us and why this topic matters, as I was saying. And in the paper, my objective is to show the so far literature, why it's matter, and provide some encourage to more people work, with this topic. It's an important topic, gender, race, and everything else. Other distinct social groups matters, like LGBTQ+, immigrants, and so on. So if I encourage someone to do the empirical work, to me, it's good enough. In the paper, here, everyone here knows about the differential crisis and conventional monetary policy and the transmission channels that we have in monetary policy. So I will not be discussing here. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone. But in the paper, I do that. I give a context to the readers. And okay, and but the fact is that since the financial crisis and unconventional monetary policy emerged, there has been a growing concern and a growing literature about the monetary policy and inequality and distribution effects. To be fair, about inequality as a role, we have it, like, for example, Piketty, for example, that is a bestseller. Of course, there is a special, especially in the heterodox economy, we have old and even ancient literature about monetary policy, inequality, and distribution. We have, for example, Marx with the intercapitalism distribution. We have the Keynes, the Robson, Pasnet, Lavoie, Sicaret, and so on. So it's not new to the heterodox literature. But the point is that nowadays, there is a growing aspect. The point is that the growing aspect is true that even some mainstream economies have become more aware of this distributive aspect of monetary policy. So to me, this is the importance of that, right? Usually mainstream economies focus on personal distribution categories, and heterodox look more at functional distribution categories, right? There have been systematic surveys about the personal distribution affects monetary policy over personal distribution effects. For example, Kappes 21 is the survey that do a survey about empirical literature of monetary policy and personal distribution. That it was the paper that inspired this one. So the methodology is pretty much the same. You looked for in the literature and do the survey. It's not that much complicated. Even though there are these surveys in literature, there is no published survey focused on distributive aspects over gender, race, or other distinct social groups. There is person or distributive, but not in social groups per se. So this is trying to do something new, even though it's not much complex and so on. Okay. As to that. Well, talking about the numbers that I found in the survey, I will not talk about each of papers per se, even though it would be possible because just only 15 papers in the survey, in the literature, but I will talk about in general. from the 15 papers, there is 12 papers that focus on labor market. So how monetary policy goes to the labor markets and goes to inequality. And there's only 3 focus on wealth distributions, okay? 1/3 focus only on gender, 1/3 only on race, and 1/3 do it together, gender, race. So for example, in this 1/3, the race and gender combined data, we have like black male and black woman, white man and white woman. So these categories are combined to the analysis. Most of the paper use VAR econometrics with monetary policy shocks, and just 4 of them uses panel data analysis. In Thorbecke, for example, we use Friedman narrative approach and Roman and Homer to identify monetary policy shocks to Federal Reserve's relatory. I don't know how to say it in English, sorry. So in the sense, major part of the literature is mainstream. So basically, almost everyone that do this empirical study use the mainstream background. Okay, we have some works that do not use mainstream, some heterodox. There's Brownstein, Coltenbrecht, my Brazilian colleague, Seguino, and Brownstein Seguino, basically the same persons, the heterodox. I mean, they are heterodox because you read that and you know there's heterodox by background, but they don't explicitly say that. There's no like post-Keynesian or Marxist explicitly background, but you know that heterodox, especially Brownstein, that has a critique about the inflation target regime and how this affects gender and race. A very important aspect that I found is that except for the Brazilian Coltenbrecht, they look for Brazilian data, every paper looks only for the United States. So if you have a paper that look for one country, it'd be United States. So I mean, I know the United States has a data available, is more easy to work, but I mean, I think it's a limitation for us. Okay, we have, sorry, and all the wealth distribution papers work with the US. We have some papers that work with more than one country. So Taktamanova and Seminska, sorry for the pronunciation, look only for industrialized countries, OCDE, but basically. Brownstein look for low and middle income countries. Seguino and Brownstein for Latin America. So this is the papers that do not look for more than one country. And well, the first papers to be in the literature was the WHO 83, that looked only for race. And after we have Abel, is exactly the next paper that I have in literature that look for that puts gender in the data. So it's the first to combine like black man, black woman, white man, is the first one. And the last one that I found was Coltenbrecht. That's February or March in this year, I guess. So probably if I had one paper after March, I don't have in this. So if you pay attention to this effect, to the data, we see that in 40 years of literature, we have only 15 papers, and most of them are not published in the journals. They're working papers. For example, Coltenbrecht is Levy Institute's working paper. So, I mean, it's a little bit, it's a few workings that, and most of them are after 2000. And that's why this is one of the reasons why this service is important, to encourage people to, you know, be more people on this literature and so on. Okay, so what are the results that we find? First of all, not surprisingly, it can be found from literature that there's intersection between gender and race. So if you are a black man, you are more favored than black woman. So gender and race intersect in this analysis. In the sense, for example, as I said, so if you are a woman, if you're a white woman, you have more power than, for example, a black woman. So gender, race, this thing. And we have here the hierarchy that the literature has all found. So the first one is surprisingly white men, followed by white women, black men, and black women. Okay, this rank uses labor market inequality and wealth. They combine the data. So I will show, for example, the black men, the periods of time that they had more favor about expansionary monetary policy. They gain more employment rate is bigger than, for example, white women, but the wealth distribution compensates the income of them. As I was told you, if you look only to the market labor, some studies find a different hierarchy for specific regions and periods. For example, we have here Taknomova and Sierski that show that at least in industrialized countries, United States, Japan, Italy, Germany, if I'm getting wrong, and the northern countries, it's not possible to infer gender differences between in a contractionary monetary policy. So if you have a shock of increasing the interest rate, men and women, there are no statistical differences in these countries, but he do not look for the race data, just for gender as a role. However, at the same time, Brownstein and Haynes, when look for low and middle income countries, they found that there's a difference between women's unemployment rate after a contractionary monetary policy and men's. So regions and periods of time change this hierarchy, especially in labor market. And there's an interesting thing, like when they look for the Taknova and Sieniska, for example, the reason that they don't find these differences is because women, especially white women, tend to be in positions less sensitive to monetary policy, education, health system. So the interest rates don't pay government, public jobs, so they have less sensibility to monetary policy. In race, for example, black, as I was told, black unemployment is more sensitive to expansionary monetary policy. So if you have decreased interest rates, probably the unemployment of black people will follow more than white, because the major part of the black population are in low-paying jobs, low-paying positions. They're more favorable about expansionary policies. The same for ABO, that see the black man's unemployment is more favorable than white women's, for example, in some years in the United States, and black women were more favored in the 80s after some affirmative policies. So period of time matters. Umi Williams found that in the long run, even in the long run, the black are more favored by expansionary monetary policies, and the vice versa. So in the contrast, if you have in the short run, they're less favored, because especially for young black men, if you have temporary jobs, if you have more demand for jobs, they fire the young black men in temporary jobs and hire white men for full-time jobs. This is one of the explanations. And however, the interesting data for me is Rogers. They found that black populations remains in a state of unemployment longer periods. So black people are more time in unemployment position than whites. Okay. So I have here some, yes, we can find a very interesting result, to me at least, that is Seguino versus Colton-Brink, the threat hypothesis. That is, the first paper, Seguino and Haynes, found that in the US federal states, where the black population is higher, there's more black people in the population, the effects of contractionary monetary policies are stronger in black population. So if you increase your interest rate, states in the US that have more black population in the total population will suffer more than in states with lower black population. This is called the threat hypothesis. The white people feel threat about the population, black population, so they punish more when you have this contractionary monetary policy. However, Colton-Brink look for Brazil, and in Brazil is the opposite. States with lower black population punish more than states with more. For example, in the South, the south of Brazil, there's the whitest region. The racism there is stronger than in the north part. There is more black population. So if you have increasing interest rates, in the South, the Black population will suffer more than the North. So it's the opposite as Seguini Haynes. And that, to me, it's interesting because, of course, in the US, the biggest Black population in some states is 25%, which is very short. In Brazil, for example, Rio Grande do Sul, that's my state, is the whitest, is 20%. So if you look in the north of Brazil, we have Bahia, I think it's 80% is Black population. So you see that different countries have different dynamics. This is one of the reasons that have to look for more countries than the US, okay? As I was explaining here. Well, look for the wealth inequality. The hierarchy in wealth inequality is the same as I was showing before: white man, white woman, Black man, and Black woman. Okay, and this literature focus mainly in ownership of financial assets and resident assets concentration. So white people has more financial assets and residential assets. So if you have expansionary monetary policy that increase prices of the assets, you gain more than the Black people. So increase inequality. And there's other things. For example, the propensity to enter in the financial market. Black people, especially women, has less propensity to invest in financial market. So if you have increase in the asset prices, if you aren't in the financial markets, you don't gain with these prices. So you lose inequality grows. Risk behavior, white, especially women and women with there's a single moms do not take risk in the financial market, because I mean you have just you in the house, your family, so you don't look that. In the US, and I mean the mechanism is monetary policy increase prices or decrease prices, and it affects distribution. There's some US data that they use in the papers. For example, to give an example from what I'm talking later, in the US, white has 10 to 20 times more non-residential financial assets than non-white people. So if you increase prices, you gain much more than non-white people, and 3 times more residential assets. So you have a residential bubble. White people gain more than non-white people. As I was saying, and this is an important thing because especially in US, the pensions are very correlated with the financial market. So, for example, in Brazil, we don't have it. Brazil is a public pension system. So it doesn't affect as much as in the US, for example. So for long run distribution, it's important. Okay, let me see. Okay, and there is some peculiar things. For example, in the wealth distribution, expansionary monetary policy increases inequality, but the contractionary monetary policy is neutral, doesn't affect inequality. So it's always a win-win, basically, for white and men and white women, because the data show that you increase prices, the white people, especially white people, gain more, but in contractionary monetary policy, it doesn't affect the distribution. Why exactly, I'm not sure. They don't explain. This is the data they show. Sorry. Okay. And there is a, I don't know what he did. It does things. Okay. Thank you. Basher and Long is a working paper, by the way, do the wealth and employment analysis together. And even though they found that Black unemployment is more affected by expansionary monetary policy, the wealth has a stronger effect on income. So you gain more income. The Black people gain more income when have expansionary monetary policy, but the wealth effect is much more higher in the income. So the inequality grows, even though in employment, Black unemployment fall more than the white one. For the reason the overall racial inequality grows. Okay, the reasons for that. Well, the literature doesn't go deep in the reasons why there is this gap, because it's most empirical and most are mainstream. They don't care much about it, but they have, for example, less access is wrong here, sorry. Less access to formal education, shorter training time. To me, the main thing is the stereotypes. So for example, I think the woman is less productive than men, so I now hire woman or hire man, or in the racial thing. The presence of minorities in the community, the threat hypothesis. Minorities are major at low-paying positions that are more sensitive to economic cycles. This is one of the reasons. And they have some papers, not all, they take the data by age. So they show that young Black people, especially young Black women, are the most sensitive to this kind of inequality. And the limitations of the survey, the literature. First of all, all single countries papers address racial and gender inequality, look only for the US. So if you have a paper look for a country, it would be US. To me, is a limitation. So what about the poor and middle income countries? Because they have different dynamics from the US. I mean, the US is an important country. We have to look to the US, but there's so many difference that this isn't enough. And other limitation is that they almost every paper look for the transmission channel on the labor market. So we have to look more, especially wealth mechanism to distribution, not only labor market with unemployment. And in conclusion, the paper try not only conduct a comprehensive survey of the literature, but try to make some considerations of the lacunes in the literature, as I was talking now. And since we know the lacunes, we probably know where is better to go now. Where should the literature go? Not look for US, look for other transmission mechanism, and so on. So the paper, in the end, tries to contribute not only with the insights in how the economy works between social groups, but also provide some incentives to more researchers to focus on this topic. And in the end, help to formulate some economic policies by competent institutions like central bank. For example, not only use inflation targets that you cannot direct for gender or race or immigrants or whatever group you want to focus. So it's basically that, it's not that complicated. Thank you.